Nathan Clark never wanted to leave Earth. He was happy teaching language classes at Ohio State University, spending his days with dusty books and eager students. His specialty was something most people thought was useless, studying how aliens might speak if they ever met humans. It was all theory back then, just fun puzzles to solve in his quiet office. Then first contact happened. 3 alien races showed up at once, and suddenly Nathan's useless hobby became the most important job in the galaxy. The government men in black suits found him grading papers on a Tuesday morning and told him he was going to space whether he liked it or not. "Dr. Clark," the serious woman with the badge said, "your country needs you. Actually, your species needs you." Nathan had laughed. He thought it was a joke. 2 hours later, he was on a military transport heading to the biggest space station ever built. Meridian Point sat at the edge of human space, a massive metal city where different species could meet without starting wars. At least, that was the plan. The station was huge, bigger than anything Nathan had ever seen. Corridors stretched for miles in every direction, with sections built for different types of beings. Some areas had thick air for the reptile people. Others had thin air for the bird-like creatures. The human section felt tiny compared to the rest. Commander Lisa Hayes met Nathan at the docking bay. She was a tough woman with short brown hair and tired eyes. "Welcome to the circus, Doc. Hope you brought your patients." Nathan looked around at the busy station. Aliens walked, slithered, and floated past him in every direction. Some looked almost human, others were so strange he couldn't figure out which end was the front. "This is really happening, isn't it?" "Been happening for 3 months now," Hayes said, leading him through the corridors. 3 species showed up at our doorstep at the same time: the Korthek Empire, the Villani Collective, and the Zephyrian League. They've been arguing ever since. They walked past a group of tall, scaly creatures with yellow eyes and sharp teeth. These were the Korthek, Nathan realized. They wore dark metal armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. They looked like dinosaurs that had learned to walk upright and gotten very angry about it. "They're the warriors," Hayes explained quietly. "Strong, aggressive, and they settle most problems by fighting. Their empire spans about 50 star systems, and they're always looking to expand." Next, they passed a group of beings that seemed to glow with soft light. They were tall and thin, with pale skin that looked almost transparent. They moved like they were dancing, even when they were just walking. These were the Villani. "The peaceful ones," Hayes said. "They're artists, scientists, philosophers. They've never fought a war in their recorded history. They live in harmony with their environment and share everything they have." The third group was the strangest. They looked like they were made of pure energy, constantly shifting and changing shape. Sometimes they looked almost solid. Other times Nathan could see right through them. The Zephyrians floated rather than walked, and they spoke in voices that sounded like wind chimes. "They're the mediators," Hayes said. "Ancient, wise, and completely neutral. They've been around for thousands of years and have seen every kind of conflict. If anyone can sort this mess out, it's them." Nathan felt overwhelmed. "What exactly am I supposed to do here?" "Your job is simple," Hayes said as they reached a large chamber filled with curved desks and translation equipment. "You sit in that booth, you listen to what they say, and you translate it for us. That's it. Don't get involved, don't take sides, just tell us what they're saying." The translation booth was a small glass room overlooking the main council chamber. It was filled with computers, screens, and headphones. Nathan sat down and immediately felt lost. The equipment was far more advanced than anything he'd used before. "The computer does most of the work," Hayes explained. "It handles the basic translation, but you need to catch the subtle stuff. The emotions, the hidden meanings, the cultural context. That's where we need a human brain." Nathan put on the headphones and heard a mixture of hissing, musical tones, and sound like static electricity. Slowly, the computer began turning it into words he could understand. It was like trying to follow 3 different conversations at once, each in a completely different language. The problem was about mining rights to an asteroid belt. The Korthek claimed the Villani had stolen their legal claim to mine valuable minerals, The Villani insisted they had done nothing wrong and that the Korthik were lying. The Zephyrians were trying to find the truth somewhere in the middle. For the first few hours, Nathan just listened and translated. The Korthik general, a massive creature named Vrakish, spoke with the kind of authority that came from winning many battles. His words were sharp and direct, full of anger and accusations. "The plant lovers took what was ours," Vrakish said, his voice a deep growl. "They used their technology to change the claim documents. They are thieves and liars." The Villani representative, a gentle being called Sylviana, responded with musical phrases that the computer translated as protests of innocence. Her people communicated through harmony and tone as much as words. Even through the translation, Nathan could hear the sadness in her voice. "We have taken nothing that was not freely given," Sylviana said. "The asteroid belt was unclaimed when we began our work. We have harmed no one." The Zephyrian mediator, Ethereal Quinn, pulsed with different colors as it spoke. "Evidence must be presented. Truth must be found. The law requires proof." Nathan translated each statement for the human observers, but as the hours passed, he began to notice something strange. He had spent years studying language patterns, the tiny details that revealed when someone was telling the truth or lying. The Korthik were being too perfect in their accusations. Too rehearsed. During a break, Nathan pulled up his language analysis programs. He fed in recordings of General Vraksh's statements and ran them through pattern recognition software. The results made his blood run cold. The emotional markers were wrong. When Korthak told the truth, their voice patterns showed certain characteristics. When they lied, the patterns changed in predictable ways. According to Nathan's analysis, General Vrakish was lying about almost everything. Nathan looked across the chamber at the Villani delegation. Sylviana was speaking quietly with her advisors, and even from a distance, Nathan could see the stress in their glowing faces. They were facing charges that could destroy their entire civilization, and they had no idea how to defend themselves against lies. "Commander Hayes," Nathan said into his communicator, "I need to talk to you." Hayes appeared at his booth within minutes. "What's wrong, Doc? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think the Korthik are lying," Nathan said, showing her his analysis. "Their speech patterns don't match truth-telling behavior. The emotional markers are all wrong." Hayes frowned at the screen. "That's interesting, but it's not our problem. We're here to observe and translate, not to play detective." "But if they're lying, then the Villani are innocent," Nathan protested. "An entire species could be destroyed because of false accusations." "That's for the Zephyrians to figure out," Hayes said firmly. "Our job is to stay neutral and report what we hear. We're not judges, we're not lawyers, we're just observers. Don't get involved." Nathan watched as the session resumed. General Vrakish continued his accusations, each word carefully chosen and perfectly delivered. The Villani continued their musical protests, becoming more desperate as the evidence mounted against them. The Zephyrians listened with ancient patience, following their strict protocols for determining truth, but Nathan knew something they didn't. He had the tools to prove the Korthik were lying, the knowledge to expose their deception. The question was whether he had the courage to use it. As the day's session ended, Nathan sat alone in his booth, staring at the evidence on his screen. He was just a translator, just a language professor who wanted to go home to his quiet life. But an entire species was counting on someone to speak for them. Even if they didn't know it yet, Nathan Clark had come to Meridian Point to translate words. He was about to discover that some translations required more than just changing one language into another. Sometimes they required changing the course of history itself. Nathan barely slept that night. He kept thinking about the language patterns, about the fear in Sylviana's voice, about the way General Vraksha's words felt too perfect, too prepared. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the analysis results. That proved the Korthak were lying. The next morning, Nathan arrived at the council chamber early. He wanted to run more tests, to be absolutely sure about what he had discovered. The evidence had to be perfect if he was going to do something about it. He loaded up fresh recordings from the previous day and ran them through every analysis program he had. The results were the same every time. The Korthek were lying not just about small details, but about everything. Their entire case was built on deception. Commander Hayes found him hunched over his computer, surrounded by empty coffee cups and data printouts. "Doc, you look terrible. When's the last time you ate something?" "I can't eat," Nathan said, not looking up from his screen. "Hayes, this is bigger than I thought. They're not just lying about the mining rights. They're lying about everything." Hayes sat down beside him. "What do you mean?" Nathan pulled up a new analysis. "Look at this. Yesterday, General Vrakish said the Villani attacked their mining ships 3 weeks ago. But the emotional markers in his voice show he's talking about something that happened months ago, not weeks. And here," he pointed to another screen, "when he describes the Villani weapons, he uses present tense like he's looking at them right now, not past tense like he's remembering them." "Maybe he's just bad at telling stories," Hayes said, but Nathan could see she was getting interested. "No, it's systematic. Every major claim he makes shows the same pattern. He's not remembering events, he's reciting a script. Someone trained him to say these things." Before Hayes could respond, the council session began. Nathan put on his headphones and settled into his booth. Today, General Vrakish was supposed to present his final evidence against the Villani, the massive Korthek. Warrior stood in the center of the chamber, his scales gleaming under the bright lights. He held a small device that projected a holographic display for everyone to see. "Today I present the final proof of Villani treachery," Vrakish announced. "This is a recording of Villani mining chief Luminara admitting to the theft of our rightful claim." The hologram showed a Villani being, glowing softly in the way their species did when they were distressed. The figure spoke in the musical language of the Villani, and the translation computers immediately began converting it to standard Galactic. "We took the asteroid belt from the Korthek," the recorded Villani said. "We used our technology to change their legal documents. We knew it was wrong, but we needed the minerals for our people." The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Nathan watched as the Villani delegation reacted with horror. Sylviana's glow dimmed until she was barely visible, a sign of extreme distress in her species, but Nathan was listening to more than just the words. He was analyzing the speech patterns, the emotional markers, the subtle details that revealed truth from lies. And what he heard made his blood run cold. The confession was fake. Not just wrong, but constructed. Someone had taken pieces of different conversations and put them together to create a false admission of guilt. Nathan's fingers flew over his keyboard, running the recording through his analysis programs. The results appeared on his screen in seconds. The emotional markers were inconsistent with the words being spoken. The grammar structures belonged to different Villani dialects that would never be used by the same person. Most damning of all, the voice patterns showed signs of digital manipulation. "This is impossible," Nathan whispered to himself. Then louder, "This is impossible." General Vrakish was continuing his presentation, but Nathan wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at the proof on his screen. The Korthak hadn't just lied about the mining rights. They had created fake evidence to frame an innocent species. Nathan looked across the chamber at the Villani delegation. Sylviana was barely glowing now, her advisors clustering around her in harmonious whispers of support. They were facing the destruction of their entire civilization based on lies, and they had no way to defend themselves. The Zephyrian mediator, Ethereal Quinn, pulsed with official colors as it spoke. "The evidence appears conclusive. The Villani have admitted to their crime. Unless there are objections, we will proceed to judgment." Nathan felt his heart pounding. This was the moment. He could stay silent, do his job as a translator, and watch an innocent species be destroyed. Or he could speak up and risk everything. "Hayes," he said into his communicator, "I have to do something." "No, you don't," Hayes replied immediately. "Your job is to translate, not to interfere. Let the Zephyrians handle this." "But they can't see what I can see," Nathan protested. "They don't understand the language patterns. They're accepting fake evidence as real." "That's not our problem," Hayes said firmly. "We're observers, Nathan. We don't get involved in alien politics." Nathan looked at his screen again. The evidence was clear, undeniable. The confession was fake, created by splicing together words from different conversations. Any linguist with the right tools could prove it, but the Zephyrians were bound by their own protocols. They could only work with officially presented evidence. Sylviana was standing now, preparing to respond to the accusation. Nathan could see the defeat in her posture, the way her glow had dimmed to almost nothing. She was going to accept the judgment because her people didn't understand how to fight against lies. "I cannot accept this," Sylviana said, her voice carrying the musical tones of deep sadness. "My people have done no wrong. But if the evidence says otherwise, then perhaps we do not understand our own actions." That was it. Nathan couldn't watch anymore. He stood up in his booth and reached for the chamber's communication system. "Nathan, don't," Hayes warned. "Think about what you're doing." "I am thinking," Nathan replied. "I'm thinking about what happens when good people do nothing." He activated the communication system. His voice echoed through the chamber, interrupting. "The proceedings. Translation error," he announced. "The presented evidence contains linguistic inconsistencies." The chamber fell silent. Every eye, alien and human, turned to look at Nathan's booth. General Rakesh's yellow eyes blazed with fury, while Sylviana's glow flickered with something that might have been hope. Ethereal Quinn pulsed with surprised colors. "Translator Clark, please explain this interruption." Nathan's hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "The confession just presented shows signs of digital manipulation. The emotional markers are inconsistent with the words being spoken, and the grammar structures belong to different Villani dialects. You dare question Korthak evidence?" General Vrakish roared. "You are merely a word servant, human. Your kind understands nothing of truth or honor." "I understand language," Nathan shot back, surprising himself with his boldness. "And languages don't lie, even when their speakers do." Nathan began explaining his analysis using simple terms that the translation computers could handle. He showed how the emotional markers in the confession didn't match the words being spoken, how the grammar was wrong for a single speaker, how the voice patterns showed signs of digital splicing. The more he spoke, the more confident he became. This was what he had trained for his entire life. Not just translating words, but understanding the deeper meanings, the hidden truths that only a skilled linguist could detect. Sylviana was glowing brighter now. Her advisors harmonizing in what Nathan had learned was a song of growing hope. The Zephyrians were pulsing with interested colors, their ancient minds processing this new information. But General Vrakish was furious. "Lies!" he shouted. "The human seeks to protect his friends. He has no proof." "I have all the proof I need," Nathan said, uploading his analysis to the chamber's main display. "Give me access to the original recordings and I'll prove every word." Ethereal Quinn considered this for a long moment. "This is highly irregular. Translators are not meant to participate in proceedings." "I'm not participating," Nathan said. "I'm doing my job. My job is to ensure accurate translation, and I cannot do that if the evidence itself is false." There was a long silence. Nathan could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the eyes of dozens of species watching him. He had crossed a line that could never be UNCROSSED. Finally, Ethereal Quinn pulsed with decision colors. "Very well. Translator Clark, you will be given access to the original recordings. You have 2 hours to present your analysis." Nathan felt a mixture of relief and terror. He had bought time for the Villani, but now he had to prove his accusations or face the consequences. And judging by the look in General Raksh's eyes, those consequences would be severe. As the session recessed, Nathan realized that his quiet life as a translator was over. He had stepped into something much bigger, much more dangerous. But as he looked at Sylviana's renewed glow, at the hope returning to the Villani delegation, he knew he had made the right choice. The truth was worth fighting for, even if it meant fighting alone. Nathan's hands were shaking as he sat in the secure analysis chamber. The room was small and windowless, filled with the most advanced language processing equipment the station had. He had 2 hours to prove that the Korthak had faked evidence against the Villani or watch an entire species face destruction. Commander Hayes paced outside the chamber, arguing loudly with someone on her communicator. Nathan could hear her voice through the thick walls. "He's just a translator," she was shouting. "He wasn't supposed to get involved in this mess. Now you're telling me Earth Command wants to disavow him?" Nathan tried to block out the noise and focus on his work. He loaded the original recordings that General Vrakish had provided and began breaking them down piece by piece. The more he analyzed, the more horrified he became. The fake confession wasn't just a simple lie. It was part of something much bigger and more evil. The Korthak had been planning this for months, maybe years. They had recorded hundreds of conversations with Volani officials, traders, and citizens. Then they had used advanced computer programs to cut and paste words together, creating fake statements that sounded real, but Nathan could see the truth. Every splice, every edit, every artificial pause was visible to his trained eye. The emotional markers were wrong. The grammar was impossible. The voice patterns jumped between different speakers without warning. Nathan pulled up another file and almost gasped. This wasn't just about the mining rights. The Korthak had created fake evidence for dozens of other crimes. They were building a case to justify a full invasion of Volani space. "They're planning genocide," Nathan whispered to himself. "They want to wipe out the entire species." He worked faster, documenting every piece of false evidence he could find. The Korthak had been very careful, but they had made mistakes. They didn't understand Volani language patterns well enough to create perfect fakes. To most listeners, the recordings sounded real, but to someone who understood the subtle rules of Volani communication, they were obviously false. Nathan found recordings that claimed Volani leaders had planned attacks on Korthak civilians. He found fake admissions of weapons smuggling, territory theft, and treaty violations. Every single recording was false, but together they painted a picture of a dangerous enemy that needed to be stopped. The door to the chamber opened, and Commander Hayes walked in. She looked tired and angry. "Earth Command is furious," she said. "They're saying you've overstepped your authority. They want you to withdraw your accusations and apologize." "I can't do that," Nathan said, not looking up from his work. "Hayes, you need to see this. It's not just about mining rights. They're planning to invade Volani space. They're going to kill millions of innocent people." Hayes looked at the screen over Nathan's shoulder. "I can't read alien language analysis, Doc. All I see is squiggly lines and numbers." Nathan pulled up a simpler display. "Look at this. This recording claims that Volani mining chief Luminara said she stole from the Korthak. But listen to the voice pattern." He played the recording slowly. "See how the emotional tone changes in the middle of sentences? That's because different parts of the sentence came from different conversations." Hayes frowned. "Are you sure about this?" "I'm positive," Nathan said. "The word stole comes from a conversation where she was talking about someone stealing her lunch. The phrase from the Korthak comes from a trade discussion where she was buying materials from them. They took innocent words and put them together to create a confession that never happened." Nathan showed her recording after recording, each one more obviously fake than the last. Hayes' expression grew more serious as she understood what they were looking at. "This is a setup," Hayes said finally. "They're framing the Volani for crimes they didn't commit. And when the Galactic Trade Consortium finds them guilty, the Korthak will have legal justification to invade," Nathan said. "They'll claim they're defending themselves against dangerous criminals." Hayes was quiet for a long moment. "Nathan, if you present this evidence, you'll be making enemies of the entire Korthak Empire. They don't forgive, and they don't forget." "If I don't present it, the Volani will be extinct within a year," Nathan replied. "I became a linguist because I love languages. How can I let an entire language disappear because I was too scared to speak up?" Nathan's computer chimed. He had found something new. Hidden in the metadata of the recordings were timestamps that showed when each piece was recorded. The fake confession had been assembled just 3 days ago, weeks after the supposed crime had taken place. "That's it," Nathan said. "That's the proof I need." The confession was created after the Korthik filed their complaint. They couldn't have had this evidence when they first accused the Villani. Hayes looked at the timestamp data. You're right. This proves premeditation. They didn't just lie, they planned to lie. Nathan saved his analysis and prepared to leave the chamber. As he reached for the door, Hayes grabbed his arm. Nathan, are you sure about this? Once you present this evidence, there's no going back. The Korthak will consider you a personal enemy. Nathan thought about Sylviana's dimming glow, about the fear in the Villani delegation, about the millions of innocent people who would die if he stayed silent. I'm sure, he said. The council chamber was packed when Nathan returned. Word had spread throughout the station that something important was happening. Beings from dozens of species crowded into the observation areas, all waiting to see what the human translator had discovered. Nathan walked to the center of the chamber, his legs feeling like rubber. He had never spoken in front of so many people before, let alone aliens who could decide the fate of entire civilizations. Ethereal Quinn pulsed with official colors. Translator Clark, present your findings. Nathan activated the chamber's main display and began his presentation. He showed the timeline inconsistencies, the voice pattern analysis, the grammatical impossibilities. He explained how the confession had been created by splicing together unrelated conversations. The chamber was completely silent as Nathan spoke. Even General Vrakish seemed to be listening carefully, his yellow eyes fixed on the human translator. The evidence is clear, Nathan concluded. The confession presented by the Korthak Empire is artificially constructed. It does not represent the actual words of any Villani citizen. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Then General Vrakish stood up, his massive form towering over everyone in the chamber. Lies, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. The human speaks lies to protect his friends. I speak the truth, Nathan replied, his voice stronger than he felt. The evidence is right there for anyone to see. General Vrakish walked slowly toward Nathan, his claws clicking on the metal floor. You dare call the Korthak Empire liars? You dare question our honor? I question your evidence, Nathan said, standing his ground. Honor has nothing to do with it. Facts are facts. The tension in the chamber was unbearable. Nathan could feel the eyes of hundreds of beings watching him, waiting to see what would happen next. General Vrakish stopped just a few feet from Nathan. The alien warrior was massive, easily 3 times Nathan's size. His scales were dark with anger, and his teeth were bared in a threatening display. You are wrong, human, Vrakish said. But even if you were right, what could you do about it? You are weak. Your species is weak. You understand nothing but fear? Nathan felt his heart pounding, but he didn't back down. Maybe we understand something you don't. Maybe we understand that strength isn't just about being able to fight. Maybe real strength comes from standing up for what's right even when you're afraid. General Vraksh's eyes blazed with fury. Pretty words from a word servant, but words are all your kind has. When words fail, only blood remains. The general reached for his weapon, and Nathan thought his life was over. But then Ethereal Quinn pulsed with authority colors, and Vrakish stopped. There will be no violence in this chamber, the mediator said. The human has presented evidence that must be examined. The proceedings will continue. General Vrakish glared at Nathan for a long moment, then returned to his position. But Nathan could see the promise in those yellow eyes. This wasn't over. Nathan returned to his booth on shaking legs. He had done what he came to do. The truth was out there for everyone to see. Now it was up to the Zephyrians to decide what to do with it. But as he looked at General Vraksh's furious expression, Nathan realized that proving the truth was only the beginning. The real fight was just starting, and he was no longer just a translator caught in the middle. He was now a target. The next 3 hours were the longest of Nathan's life. He sat in his booth watching as the Zephyrian mediators examined his evidence. They moved slowly, checking every detail with the careful patience of a species that had lived for thousands of years. Meanwhile, General Vrakish stood like a statue in the center of the chamber. He hadn't moved since Nathan's presentation, but his yellow eyes never left the human translator. Nathan could feel that stare like a physical weight, pressing down on him with the promise of violence. Commander Hayes had been called away to deal with angry messages from Earth Command. Nathan was alone with his thoughts and his fear. He kept replaying his analysis in his mind, making sure he hadn't made any mistakes. The evidence was solid, the Korthek recordings were fake, but would that be enough? Finally, Ethereal Quinn pulsed with decision colors. The chamber fell silent as the ancient mediator prepared to speak. The analysis presented by Translator Clark is thorough and convincing, Quinn announced. The linguistic evidence shows clear signs of digital manipulation. The confession attributed to Villani mining chief Luminara appears to be artificially constructed. The Villani delegation burst into harmonious songs of relief. Sylviana's glow brightened until she was almost too bright to look at. Nathan felt a moment of triumph. He had done it. He had saved them, but General Rakish was not finished. Lies! The Korthek warrior roared. The human has tampered with the evidence. He has used his alien technology to make our truth look false. The evidence speaks for itself, Nathan said from his booth. Anyone with the right knowledge can verify my analysis. Knowledge, Rakish spat. What does a word servant know of truth? Your species is weak and deceitful. You twist words to serve your purposes. Ethereal Quinn pulsed with warning colors. General Rakish, you will control yourself. The evidence has been examined fairly? Fair? Rakish's voice rose to a roar. There is nothing fair about letting a human decide the fate of the Korthek Empire. He is biased. He protects his friends. Nathan felt anger rising in his chest. I don't have friends here. I don't care about politics or empires. I only care about the truth. Truth! Rakish laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. You want to know the truth, human? The truth is that the weak deserve to be conquered. The truth is that the Villani are soft and useless. The truth is that the galaxy belongs to the strong. That's not truth, Nathan said, standing up in his booth. That's just the excuse bullies use when they want to hurt innocent people. The insult hit home. Rakesh's scales darkened to almost black, and his claws extended to their full length. You dare call the Korthek Empire bullies? You dare insult our honor? I call lies what they are, Nathan shot back. And I call murder what it is too. General. Rakish drew his plasma sword. The weapon hummed with deadly energy, casting an eerie blue light across the chamber. Enough! I challenge the human to combat. Let blood determine who speaks truth. The chamber erupted in chaos. Beings from dozens of species began talking at once, their voices creating a wall of sound that hurt Nathan's ears. He felt the blood drain from his face as he realized what had just happened. By Galactic Trade Consortium law, any delegate could invoke trial by combat when their honor was questioned. It was an ancient tradition meant to settle disputes when words failed. Nathan, a middle-aged professor who had never been in a fight in his life, had just been challenged by a 7-foot-tall alien warrior. Ethereal Quinn pulsed with official colors, calling for silence. The challenge has been issued according to law, Translator Clark. You have the right to decline, but doing so will be considered an admission that your accusations are false. Nathan's mind raced. If he declined the challenge, everything he had proved would be worthless. The Korthak would claim he was a coward and a liar. The Villani would be found guilty, and millions would die, but if he accepted, he would be fighting for his life against a trained warrior who could kill him with one swing of that plasma sword. Commander. Hayes came running into the chamber, her face pale with shock. Nathan, you don't have to do this. We can find another way. What other way? Nathan asked. If I don't fight, he wins by default? The Villani will be declared guilty, and the Korthak will have their excuse for genocide. But you'll die, Hayes. Saad, look at him. He's a professional soldier. You're a college professor. Nathan looked across the chamber at General Rakish. The alien warrior was practicing with his sword, moving through combat forms with deadly grace. Each swing of the blade could cut through metal. One hit would be enough to kill Nathan instantly. Maybe, Nathan said. But maybe not. Humans have survived worse odds. Sylviana approached Nathan's booth, her glow dim with worry. "Human Nathan?" she said in her musical voice. "You have already done more than anyone could ask. You have proved our innocence." "That is enough. It's not enough if you all die anyway," Nathan replied. "Someone has to stand up to bullies. If not me, then who?" Nathan thought about his quiet life back on Earth, his small apartment, his books, his peaceful classroom full of eager students. He could go back to that life if he wanted. All he had to do was admit he was wrong and apologize, but then he thought about the fake recordings, about the planned genocide, about the millions of innocent Villani who would die if the Korthek got their way. He thought about all the other species who would be next, all the civilizations that would fall to Korthek lies and violence. "I accept the challenge," Nathan said. The chamber fell silent. Even General Vrakish stopped his practice and stared at the human translator. "You are either very brave or very stupid," the Korthek warrior said. "Maybe both," Nathan replied. "When do we fight?" Ethereal Quinn pulsed with formal colors. "Combat will take place in 1 hour in the station's arena." "Both?" "Fighters may choose traditional weapons from their species. The fight continues until one yields or falls." Nathan left his booth on unsteady legs. He had 1 hour to prepare for a fight he couldn't win. Hayes walked beside him, talking rapidly into her communicator. "I need a weapons expert down here now," she was saying. "And get me everything we have on Korthek combat tactics." The professor just challenged a trained killer to single combat. They made their way to the human quarters, where a small group of military advisors was waiting. Nathan had never seen any of them before, but they all looked at him like he was already dead. "Sir, with respect, this is suicide," one of them said. "Korthek warriors train from childhood. They're built for fighting. You're built for reading books." "Thanks for the encouragement," Nathan said dryly. "What weapons do I have to choose from?" They showed him a selection of human military equipment. Plasma rifles, energy swords, explosive grenades, and armor that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Nathan had no idea how to use any of it. "The rifle is your best bet," Hayes said. "Keep your distance and shoot fast. Don't let him get close." Nathan picked up the plasma rifle. It was heavier than he expected, and the controls looked impossibly complex. "How do I even turn this thing on?" The weapons expert showed him the basics. Point, aim, pull trigger. Simple enough in theory, but Nathan's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the weapon steady. "You've got one advantage," Hayes sighed. "He'll underestimate you. He thinks humans are weak and cowardly. Use that." Nathan practiced with the rifle for the remaining time, but he knew it wasn't enough. 45 minutes of training couldn't make up for a lifetime of never fighting. He was going to die in that arena, and everyone knew it. As they prepared to leave for the combat arena, Nathan made a decision. If he was going to die, he would make it count. He would show the galaxy that humans didn't back down from bullies. No matter how big or scary they were, he would prove that sometimes being right was worth dying for. The arena was in the lower levels of the station, a large circular room with metal walls and bright lights. Thousands of beings from dozens of species had gathered to watch the fight. Nathan had never seen so many aliens in one place. As Nathan entered the arena, the crowd fell silent. He looked small and fragile in his borrowed armor, carrying weapons he barely knew how to use. Across from him, General Vrakish looked like a force of nature, his dark scales gleaming and his plasma sword humming with power. "Last chance to withdraw, human," Vrakish called out. "Admit you lied, and I will kill you quickly." Nathan raised his rifle and tried to keep his voice steady. "I told the truth. Let's finish this." The referee, a neutral alien from a species Nathan didn't recognize, raised its hand. "Combat begins in 3, 2, 1. Nathan Clark, linguistics professor and reluctant hero, prepared to fight for his life. The arena erupted in noise as the fight began. General Vrakish charged forward with his plasma sword raised, moving faster than Nathan thought possible for something so large. Nathan barely had time to raise his rifle before the Korthek warrior was on him. Nathan threw himself to the side. rolling across the metal floor as the plasma sword cut through the air where his head had been. The blade left a glowing scar in the arena wall, showing just how deadly it was. "Stand and fight, coward!" Vrakish roared, turning to face Nathan again. Nathan scrambled to his feet and fired his rifle. The energy blast hit Vrakish in the chest, but the warrior's thick scales and armor absorbed most of the damage. Vrakish laughed and came at him again. For the next few minutes, Nathan did nothing but run and dodge. Vrakish was stronger and faster, but Nathan was smaller and could change direction quickly. He ran around the arena, firing shots whenever he could, but none of them seemed to do much damage. The crowd was getting restless. They had come to see a fight, not a chase scene. Some of them started booing, calling Nathan a coward for not standing and fighting like a warrior, but Nathan wasn't trying to be a warrior. He was trying to survive long enough to figure out how to win as he ran. Nathan watched Rakesh's movements. The general was fast and strong, but he followed patterns. After each attack, he paused for a split second to prepare for the next one. When he charged, he always came straight forward, never curving or changing direction. Nathan had spent his life studying patterns in language. Now he was studying patterns in combat, and he was beginning to see weaknesses. Vrakish cornered Nathan against the arena wall and raised his sword for a killing blow. Nathan waited until the last possible second, then dove between the warrior's legs. The sword hit the wall with a shower of sparks, and Nathan came up behind Vrakish. This time, Nathan aimed for the joints in the warrior's armor. His energy blast hit the back of Vrakish's knee, and the general stumbled. It wasn't much, but it was the first real damage Nathan had done. "Lucky shot," Vrakish snarled, turning around. But Nathan noticed the general was favoring his injured legs slightly. The fight continued, but now Nathan had a plan. Instead of running randomly, he began leading Vrakish in specific directions. He used the arena's features to his advantage, ducking behind support pillars and using the uneven floor to make the general stumble. Every time Vrakish charged, Nathan would dodge and fire at another joint in the armor. The back of the elbow when Vrakish swung his sword, the ankle when he pivoted to turn, the shoulder when he raised his arm to block. None of the hits were serious by themselves, but they were adding up. Vrakish was getting slower, more cautious. His attacks weren't as precise as they had been at the start. "Fight me properly," Vrakish shouted in frustration. "Stop running like a scared animal." "I'm not running," Nathan replied, breathing hard. "I'm adapting." The words seemed to confuse Vrakish. In Korthak culture, there was only one way to fight: direct, aggressive, overwhelming force. The idea of changing tactics during battle was foreign to him. Nathan used that confusion to his advantage. While Vrakish was trying to understand what adapting meant, Nathan moved to a new position and fired 3 quick shots at the general's sword arm. The energy blasts hit their target, and Vrakish's grip on his plasma sword weakened. The weapon flickered and dimmed as its power source was damaged. Now Vrakish was angry. He threw his damaged sword aside and charged Nathan with just his claws and teeth. He was still dangerous, maybe more dangerous now that he was desperate, but Nathan had been watching, learning, adapting. He had figured out Vrakish's timing, his patterns, his weaknesses. When the general charged this time, Nathan was ready. Nathan waited until Vrakish was committed to his attack, then activated one of the explosive charges he had attached to his belt. He threw it not at Vrakish, but at the arena wall behind him. The explosion wasn't enough to hurt the general directly, but it showered him with metal fragments and dust. More importantly, it created a distraction that lasted just long enough for Nathan to get behind him again. This time, Nathan didn't aim for the armor joints. He aimed for the helmet locks. The energy blast hit perfectly, and Vrakish's helmet came loose. The general reached up to adjust it, and in that moment of distraction, Nathan fired again. The blast hit Vrakish in the side of the head, not hard enough to kill him, but hard enough to stun him. The general staggered, shook his head, and then looked at Nathan with something like respect. "You fight like no warrior I have ever faced," Vrakish said. "That's because I'm not a warrior," Nathan replied. "I'm a human." Nathan could have finished the fight then. Vrakish was hurt, off balance and temporarily defenseless. One more energy blast would have ended it. But Nathan hesitated. He thought about what Commander Hayes had said about humans being different, about how they adapted, how they found ways to survive against impossible odds. But there was something else that made humans different, something that even Hayes might not have understood. Humans knew when to show mercy. "Yield," Nathan said, pointing his rifle at Vrakish. "You're beaten." Vrakish looked at the human translator, this small, soft creature who had somehow outfought a trained Korthik warrior. The general's pride warred with his practical nature. He was defeated, and continuing to fight would only make his humiliation worse. "I yield," Vrakish said, lowering his head in the traditional Korthik gesture of submission. "You have fought. With honor, human, your victory is earned." The arena erupted in cheers. Beings from dozens of species were on their feet, chanting Nathan's name in languages he didn't even recognize. He had done something no one thought possible. A human translator had defeated a Korthik general in single combat. Nathan lowered his rifle and almost collapsed from exhaustion. The adrenaline that had kept him going was fading, and every muscle in his body ached. He was covered in sweat, dust, and a few drops of his own blood from minor cuts, but he was alive. More importantly, he had won. Commander Hayes was the first. To reach him, her face split by a huge grin. "Doc, that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. How did you do it?" "I adapted," Nathan said, echoing his words from the fight. "That's what humans do." Sylviana appeared next, her glow so bright it was almost blinding. She was singing in pure Villani, a song of gratitude and joy that needed no translation. "Human Nathan," she said when her song ended, "you have saved not just my people, but the ideal of truth itself. We will never forget this." Other beings crowded around Nathan, congratulating him in dozens of languages. He had become a celebrity, a legend, a symbol of something larger than himself, but the most important reaction came from Ethereal Quinn. The ancient mediator pulsed with formal colors as it made an official announcement. "Based on the evidence presented by Translator Clark and confirmed by his victory in honorable combat, this council finds the Villani Collective innocent of all charges. The accusations brought by the Korthik Empire are declared false and malicious." The Villani delegation burst into harmonious celebration. The Korthik representatives looked stunned, their elaborate plans crumbling around them. General Vrakish approached Nathan one more time. The defeated warrior looked tired but not bitter. "You fought well, human," he said. "I misjudged your species. Perhaps the Korthak have much to learn about strength." Nathan nodded. "Maybe we all do." As the crowd began to disperse, Nathan found himself alone with his thoughts. He had come to Meridian Point as a simple translator, expecting to spend a few days converting words from one language to another. Instead, he had exposed a conspiracy, saved a species from genocide, and become the galaxy's first human combat champion. The quiet professor from Ohio had become a legend. News of Nathan's victory spread throughout the galaxy within hours. The story of the human translator who stood up to an empire and one became famous on thousands of worlds. Nathan Clark was no longer just a linguist. He was a symbol of courage, of standing up for what's right even when the odds seem impossible. But perhaps most importantly, he had shown the galaxy something new about humanity. They weren't just another species trying to find their place among the stars. They were something special, something unique. They were the species that would fight for truth, even when truth was dangerous. They were the species that would protect the innocent, even when protection meant risking everything. They were the species that would adapt, survive, and triumph against any odds. Nathan Clark had been just there to translate. But he had become something much more important. He had become humanity's first galactic hero. And as he looked out at the cheering crowd, covered in blood and sweat and glory, he realized that sometimes the most important translations weren't between languages. Sometimes they were between what was wrong and what was right, and that was a translation worth fighting for.